So let's start this video. Okay. So 7:30. So last week we spoke about Bereshis, because remember we said that Bereshis is not a parsha that you speak about very often because you don't get a full week. It's the only week that you never learn on a Shabbat Mincha in outside of Israel, because Simchas Torah can never be a Shabbos. So therefore, the Shabbos Mincha before Parshas Bereshis, you're learning V'zos HaBrocha. So that's one of the trick questions. When is the only week that you never learn a Shabbat Mincha? And that is Bereshis. So we spoke a bit about Bereshis, and remember we said it was a dangerous parsha. It was difficult because people can get themselves into difficulties trying to understand and so on. So we sort of glazed over Parshas Noach. So this week we're going to talk a little bit about Avram, or as he should really be known as Avraham, because his name was changed to Avraham, and the Gemara says that one shouldn't call him Avram anymore. It's some people say it's a sin to call him Avram, whereas Yaakov, whose name was changed to Yisrael, but you still can call him Yaakov. In fact, the Torah calls him many times Yaakov. We say in Hallel, Ahovachi Hatzur Agam Moyim. What's it about Elokei Yaakov? What was it? We say Yaakov in Hallel. I can't think of it at the top of my head. But we shouldn't call Avraham Avram. But the Torah, at the beginning of this week's parsha, introduces us to this new figure who was born at the end of Parshas Noach. So we haven't totally glazed over Noach, because we can say right at the end of Parshas Noach, we were introduced to, as we're going to call him, Avraham. Actually, according to some opinions, the very end of Parshas Noach was Avraham's first test. When it says he went out of Or Kasdim, the fire of Kasdim, they say he was thrown in because he refused to believe in idols. He refused to believe in King Nimrod as the god, and they threw him into Or Kasdim. We know the story, and Hashem made a miracle, and he survived. And some people say that was his first test. That is the debate. We'll come to that shortly. So that was at the end of last week's parsha that she was introduced to this Avram. And then this week's Sedra, all of a sudden, Vayoma Hashem el Avram. Hashem said to Avram. Now, most times Hashem appeared to people, he appeared. Somehow showed himself, or whatever you want to call it. Like to Moshe Rabbeinu, who appeared to him in the burning bush. There was some sort of a vision, some sort of a appearance of what exactly is another story. And when he appeared to the prophets, he appeared in some sort of a vision. To Yaakov, he appeared in the dream, right? When he came up and down the ladder. So here, all of a sudden, Vayoma Hashem el Avram. All of a sudden is the voice. Hello! And we know the Medrash says that Avram, why was he so special? Why did Hashem love Avram so much? Why is he known as Avraham Avinu? Right? He is our forefather that we daven every day about him. His merits are saving us literally every second, right? This morning in the davening, the extra davening we say on Monday and Thursdays, we ask Hashem to remember the Akedah, remember Avram. We're always living of his merit. So what was so special about him? So, as we all know, he was one of the first people, the first person to recognize Hashem on his own. Obviously, Adam Arishon, he was created by God. So that's easy. I mean, he was created by God. And the first few people had these wonderful miracles all the time, the Gan Eden, the world. So there wasn't a big thing for them to believe in God. Noach, again, was passed down from his father generation. He still had that belief. Where it came to Avram at that time, Avodah Zarah, idol worship, was completely taken over. And his father was the chief salesman. He was the chief salesman of the idol worship. Now, I know this very well, because they made a movie called Young Abraham, which I watched in my school when I was a teacher of young kids, and it was, and you see him there smashing up the idols. It's a great movie, animated movie, and it brings down all these things. It's a wonderful video. So he was stooped, his family was steeped in idol worship, but he realized this can't be, as the Medrash says. He thought, the sun is the god. Well, what happens to the sun at night? There's the moon. So the moon is the god. Well, the moon and the stars are not there during the day. Well, you can't see them. So therefore, they can't be the god. There must be somebody above them commanding him, commanding the sun to come out. And Nimrod said, well, no, I'm the god. So the Medrash says, Avram said to Nimrod, okay, if you're a god, tell the sun, instead of rising in the east tomorrow, you're going to rise in the west. And of course he couldn't do it, because he didn't have the power, he wasn't the god, and he showed Nimrod, see, you're not who you say you are. If you're such a god, and there was 2 or 3 other examples, and that's why Nimrod said, right, let's throw this guy into the fire, because he's bursting my bubble. He's showing me up. So that's why they threw him in, because he proved he wasn't a god. There must be somebody above all of this who is running the show. Like nowadays, one of the common proofs about Hashem is they say, see this beautiful building here we have of our shul here, right? With the chairs, with the nice colors, and the different art, with the different patterns, and the lights, and the sprinkler systems. If I came and they said, who built this building? Who built it? They say, well, actually, this building just happened to appear over millions of years, and it everything was beautifully made, and the wood, and the Sidurim and everything just came. You would think you were crazy. You would look you in the loony asylum, right? Because you say it can't be. There must have been a builder. There must have been somebody who built it, orchestrated it, planned it. So that's how Avraham came to the realization that there must be Hashem. So after he believed in Hashem and he made people aware of Hashem, he was the original. Nowadays you see these people that hold these rallies, right? In these big stadiums about God and all this sort of stuff, right? Now, Baruch Hashem, you have a lot of, I know Rabbi Zevi Saunders, my wife, attended some of them in New York when she was alive. She used to give us a Thursday night shir, and she used to hold these big rallies, right? And you remember, if any of you have been to any of her, when you went to some of her rallies? So Avraham Avinu was the first religious, godly rally. He held these rallies to inform people about God and to bring them under God's wing. And that's why God said, I love him so much, because he, quite literally, he believed in me. He was the first one who believed in me. He saw my potential. I mean, when you say that in human terms, you usually think somebody thinks, well, he's a bit depressed, and I believed in him, and I built him up, and I made him believe he was a somebody. Or like in sports, you give somebody that belief, you can do it, you can throw that pass, you can hit the winning. But obviously, when we think of God, it's not that way, because God has the ultimate power. So all of a sudden, Hashem spoke to him, didn't appear to him, he spoke to him. God said, if he believes in me, I'm going to go say hello. So he went and he said hello. In fact, so the question is, why didn't he appear to to Avraham? Why did he just speak to him? And they say because he was not in the land of Israel. One explanation is because he wasn't in the land of Israel. And
neither was Moshe.
Huh?
Neither was Moshe in the burning bush.
That's a good question. Yes, neither was Moshe in the burning bush. Good question. Yes, he was. Good question. Yeah, he wasn't in the. He wasn't in the land of Israel either. Good question. Hashem didn't appear to him. Interesting, but okay. So he was here, and I think Vayera only happened when he actually appeared to him. May have been only after he had his circumcision and he became pure. All the other times, Vayomer Hashem el Avram, I don't know if he actually appeared to him, or the Bris Bein Abasarim. Did he appear to him? Vayomer Elav. Hashem said to him. Hashem said, no. Hayad Dvar Hashem el Avram b'machaz elemo. The Hashem spoke to him in a bit. Anyway, okay. So he spoke to him. All of a sudden, said to him, "Hello, will you please up sticks and move, leave everything behind, and go and settle in this faraway." Didn't tell him where it was, right? What did he say? Go away from your land, your birthplace, your father's house, to a land I'm going to show you. Now, I put on Facebook as a teaser for this shir tonight. I said, what do I and Avraham Avinu have in common? Now, Dory probably knows the answer to this because you probably read my article. Do you read it already? Oh, you haven't read it because I wrote about this in the article. What do I and Avraham Avinu have in common? Somebody wrote on Facebook, you're both Jewish, but I also had something similar. I can relate on a little bit, not trying to pretend that I'm Avraham Avinu in any way, shape or form, but I can relate a little bit to what this test was all about. We know Avraham had 10 trials, and in true typical Jewish fashion, There is a debate about what those trials are. There's a Mishnah in Pirkei Avos, chapter 5, Mishnah Daled, Asara Nisyonis Nisnasna Avraham Avinu. 10 trials Avraham had. And there's a difference between Rashi and the Rambam. Rashi starts from Lecha, that was the first, from the beginning. All of a sudden Hashem said to him, the first challenge. The Rambam, I said, starts from when he got thrown in years before to the fire. Most opinions finish with the Akedah as number 10, except, interesting enough, I saw this afternoon, Rabbeinu Yonah, he said the Akedah was the 9th, and the final one was the burial of Sarah. We'll talk about that maybe in a few weeks. I'll tease you all. I'll have to come back in a couple of weeks to find out what he means and how he explains the death of Sarah, especially as we seem to understand that the tests, most people say the Akedah was the hardest one. So if we live off the Akedah, what's the point of having another test afterwards? So we'll discuss that maybe in a few weeks. So all of a sudden he's told, he's got all this following, he's living in Haran, he's got this wonderful following, right? He has all these wonderful people, he's got fame, he's got fortune, everybody knows who he is, everybody knows Avraham, he's amazing, he can achieve so much. And Hashem says to him, no, you got to up sticks, and as my wife taught me this expression, you got to move to the boonies, right? You have that expression here, she keeps telling me the boonies, right? You move to the boonies, that's what he said. You go to a faraway land. I didn't even tell him where it is. You go to the boonies. You keep going, and I'll tell you when you can settle. So what does Rashi say? Rashi says, I'm going to make you into a great nation, because normally when you leave, you sort of fall back. You lose your fame. I'll bless you, because normally travel makes you weary. I'll make your name great, because normally when you leave somewhere, your fame and fortune diminishes. So I have a little bit of a connection to this. So what's my story? Some of you already know, of course. So, and I wrote about this in my article. So when I was in England, I'm going to embellish it a little bit, obviously. I like to think of myself anyway as a big shot, right? I was a reality TV star. I was on TV, as I'm sure you all know, and you've watched my videos and my TV show. And I was on the radio on a regular basis. I was watched by 8 million people in one night. People used to come up to me in the street and ask me for my photo and so on. Although when I was coming to America after I got married and I was in Virgin Atlantic in Heathrow, they recognized me and I tried to get a upgrade. I said, well, are any upgrades to first class at all today? They said no. So I thought, well, what good is all of this being recognized if I can't get an upgrade to first class, or at least business class, or at least economy flex, or whatever, or economy something or other, the higher levels, whatever. But it didn't do me any good, but still people would come, recognize me, right? I had my friends, I had my life, I had my job, I had my calling, I was a Rav of a shul, right? I was giving shiurim, I was, as I like to say, I was a big shot, right? I had my life, my friends, my family. It was, going well. And then Hashem said to me, not quite literally like Avraham, he sent me a wife, an American wife. So, as I like to say, in Parshas Bereshis, when God creates woman and brings her to Adam, what does he say? Adam says, this is the one for me. A man should forsake his parents and cling to his wife. So the man forsakes his parents, but it doesn't say that the woman forsakes her parents. So the women stay with their parents, the men forsake their parents, and they have to come and go across to the women's side, which happens, I think, a lot. I have a lot of friends who were hooked across the Atlantic and so on. So that's how it usually goes, right? The guy ends up... so I gave up everything, right? I gave up my job, I gave up my vocation, I gave up my calling, I gave up my friends, and I up sticks. At least I knew where I was going. And so I thought, until Hashem changed all of that anyway, because originally I'd put my jobs and everything on hold for 6 months while Erica was finishing her master's, but the Eibishter had other ideas, and he caused problems with the master's degrees, and she had to do, because she was doing 2 masters at the same time, so they thought there was some crossover with some of they assured her that some of these credits, these classes count for both, and right at the end they said, sorry, you got to do another half a year. So that was Hashem's way of saying, right, so you got to settle here. So, as I say, you think you know where you're going, but Hashem says, I'll show you. And then we ended up here in Florida a few months later. But I gave everything up. And I remember the first week I moved to America, it was Rosh Chodesh Nisan, just after my Sheva Brachas had finished. So, walked in, It was a Sunday morning. So that Shabbos, I walk into a shul, it was like a mile away. Again, that shul was another miracle, because I put on this funny app, find me an Ashkenaz shul near my house. And as it happened, I found out later, there was an Ashkenaz shul about 20 feet away. Round the corner. The Avenue M Jewish Center was like 50 feet down, round the corner. Right there, could have gone there. But my app took me to 1.1 miles away to the Talmud Torah of Flatbush. But again, that turned out a miracle, because I ended up getting a job there. So as I say, God has his plans. But anyway, so can you imagine that first Shabbos I walk in? The previous Shabbos, I was in my cap and my gown, as you can see on my Facebook pictures. We used to wear, in English, used to wear these nice long rabbinic gowns and a nice hat. I brought my hat with me. It's a bit squashed, but I brought my hat. I have it in my house, and so I was in my hat and my gown, sitting at the front, giving a sermon. As I like to say, the big shot. And then all of a sudden, there I am the next week. I don't know anybody. I'm a stranger. Nobody knows me. Nobody cares. Nobody's interested. So I got a little bit of a taste, a little bit of a understanding what this test is all about. And some Mepharshim say this is one of the hardest tests. I know we usually think of the Akedah as the most difficult. Not that I'm saying it's not. But this was one of the, maybe the second hardest. Everyone was challenging in its own way, of course. They're all... But I can relate to this. And you have to build up your life again in that sense, right? You have to build up your life again. And you have to try and make it somewhere new. It's not so easy, right? Not so easy. It's difficult. Don't know anybody. You can't even speak the same language, right? You don't have the same culture. Nobody is stopping you on the street. Although they did, actually. After about a week, I got stopped in Moshe's supermarket discount, but not for who I was. It was for the way I talked. One woman stops and says, I love your accent, in the middle of the store. I was like, oh, okay. So the Abishter was like, okay, I'll let you get at least a little bit stopped in the street, So, nobody's recognizing you, you're sitting like maybe it's like how people, when they go back, I don't know, the snowbirds, I don't know. I was speaking to snowbirds here, everyone come here, you got Gary's, the Gabbai, the president, right? You're all, and when you go back to your shuls, I don't know, maybe also you'll have to be like, you come from the winter of being in charge and being the boss, right? And then you come back to your shul up north, and I don't know, maybe you have to just slip in, I don't know. Are you on the board there? No, so it's the same, right? You get the idea, right? One place you're a big person, you're in charge, you have the power, you have everything, and then you have to go next week, you go back up north, you slip back in, and I don't know, maybe everyone's very friendly up north, but and nobody knows who you are, you sit at the back, you don't have the same. Got to build up again, but at least then you're coming back in a few weeks or a few months, so it's, but you got to start again. It's difficult, it's hard, you got to build up. Obviously Hashem helps, like he helped me by making me go to the wrong shul, and a mile away. And a few other mistakes happened along the way that got me other jobs. As I say, even technically this job, which I applied for, all the jobs I applied for, I never got. All the jobs I got, I never really applied for, which is what Lord Jacobovitz also used to say about himself. Even though technically I applied for this job, but I was told about it by somebody who... Anyway, so I can understand what this test was. Hashem said, you're good here, right? You've got everything. But I want you to go somewhere else. Let's see if you can make it in a different part. Like I also put in I heard on the news now, everything you hear has a meaning, has a purpose, right? Everything you hear, every person you see, every incident you come across in your life, you don't always know why, has some sort of a connection. So it happened to be, I think it was last Thursday, I came across a 3-minute video on Twitter. Twitter people put these videos on, right, of these things. And it was, yes, because I have all the sports channels on my Twitter feeds, right? And it was like a 3-minute video about the guy from the New England Patriots, Tom Brady, right? He said that something that he can go on until he's 42 or something. Or he is 42 and he's going to go on until he's 45, I don't know. Anyway, he said he can go on and discussing, is it right for the New England Patriots to get rid of him? Because bringing someone in, he's getting old, right? Would he be able to go start somewhere else, at his time of life? And I was thinking, well, Avraham Avinu was 75, this guy's 41, and they're saying it, at his time of life. And they were saying, and it's true, sometimes, he's a great player, and I'm not belittling his achievements, but he's used to the system, right? He's got all his coaches, and he's got his tacticians, and he's got his buddies, and he knows exactly what he's thinking, and I know what you're thinking, and I know what your moves are, I know where you're going to go. I know it all, right? I've been here for 15 years, or whatever it is. I know exactly how you're going to play. And the same way with lots of sports. You get to know people, you get to the system, right? You know how they're going to... So you're used to it. But if you take you out of that environment and say, okay, now, Mr. Brady, can you please go to Miami Dolphins, right? They're not doing very well, right? So you go play for them. Will he be the same player? Probably not. But he's the best. Yeah, but now you're in a different system, right? You're in a different place, different culture. How many times do we see it, right? Different culture, can't settle, not used to the new players, not used to the new management. You don't speak to me the same way as the other guy spoke to me, and the masseuse is not quite the same, and all this stuff, right? It's different. You can't necessarily repeat the same ideas as you had. You're in a new environment. It's strange, not easy. You get in your comfort zone where you are. So Hashem was saying to him, go out of your comfort zone. Leave everything behind. Go away, far, far away. I should have measured how many miles it was from where he ended up going to where, a good few 100 miles at least. Where is Haran? Somewhere in Iran, somewhere, Iraq somewhere, and he went up to Israel. So I don't know, outside at least 1,000 miles or something. It's a long way. So he traveled a long distance. Gave everything, there was... And at least Baruch Hashem, you have telephones, you have Skype, like my sister's engagement yesterday, right? I told you last week my sister got engaged. And so she had an engagement party yesterday in England. So I wasn't there, didn't go. Mr. Hashem will go for the wedding. But I was Skyping in, the connection dropped, so I didn't watch it live, but in the end, I saw videos. So even though I'm not there, and it's not the same, but and then they showed me on video, take me around, saying hello to everybody, and so in some level, you can be there, you can talk. I can talk to my parents, I can talk to my friends, right? I can show everybody my videos on YouTube, or my YouTube channel, so I still can, up to some point, live off the things from, whereas Avraham couldn't, right? He didn't even know if his father was alive or dead. They say, the Medrash says, he said to Hashem, how am I going to do the mitzvah of kibbud of aim if I'm living so far away? And Hashem's response was, there ain't no kibbud of aim, your father's trying to kill you, you're an idol worshiper, you're causing me all these problems, don't you worry about that. So, I had it much easier in some ways, right? Although I was thinking, it says, Avraham went with all ves hanefesh asher osu b'charon. So that means he took all his friends with him. So at least he had all his friends, right? He had all his friends and his entourage. So you go in an entourage, people say, who's this entourage? You see a motorcade. You don't know who the motorcade is. Who's this? But it must be somebody special, right? Otherwise he won't be having a motorcade. So Avraham comes with his hundreds and thousands of people, right? You think, who is this guy? But anyway, so why did Hashem do this? Obviously testing him, but also because, you want to spread your fame. If you're good in one place, great. So in those days, maybe 1,000 people, 10,000 people, 20,000 people knew you, right? But you start going to different places, you can spread yourself about, like me. So they know me in England, they know me in Manchester and Southport, where I was a rabbi. Now they know me a little bit in New York. I mean, within reason, because I had a job there, I was a rabbi there, a little bit, right? I still speak to some people, still phone me. Now I'm here in Florida, I was in Western, so you get around a bit, and people know you, so your fame, or whatever you want to call it. I think I'm getting too carried away with myself tonight. But anyway, gets known. So that's what Hashem wanted to do. He wanted his fame to get known. He wanted him to be able to bring different people all over the world under the banner of godliness. So if you have all these different people dotted around the world, you spread God throughout the world. I suppose it's a little bit like what Chabad are doing these days, right? They're going out to all these different places, they're going to all the different parts of the world. So at least if you can make a few Jews or a few mitzvahs or whatever it is in all parts of the world, you can unite the whole world, as opposed to having like one center, where it was in Haran, you have the thriving center of godliness in Haran, but the rest of the world is stooped and steeped or whatever in idol worship. So he sent him out to do all these things. So that's one of the ideas of the test of Lecha, why it was so difficult, and as I say, I can relate on a little level, right? Baruch Hashem, I can't relate to many of the other tests, Baruch Hashem, but at least I can relate a little bit to this test. Now, if we move on a little bit, so just a couple more things about this age of 3. The Gemara in the Darim, when he brings this down, says Avraham recognized his creator when he was 3 years old. How do you know he was 3 years old? So it brings the pasuk. The pasuk in Pashas Toldos, just before Sheni. We learn it on a Monday and Thursday, just before Sheni. When Hashem is talking to Yitzchak and blessing him, he says, Eikev asher shama Avraham b'koli, because Avraham listened to my voice. Vayishma mitzvah, he kept all my mitzvahs. That's why I'm giving you all these blessings. So the question is, how on earth does this pasuk explain that Avraham was 3 when he recognized his creator? So I saw an explanation from the Rosh who says, how long did Avraham live? 175 years. What is the gematria of the word Eikev? Ayin is 70, Kof is 100, and Beis is 2. How much is that? 172. What's 175 minus 172? 3. So Eikev asher shama Avraham b'koli, because Avraham listened to me for 172 years, then you're getting all those rewards. That must mean he started recognizing Hashem at the age of 3. So that's how we know. That's why it brings this puzzle, because Eikev is gematria 172. Another thing about gematrias is Lecha. What's the gematria of Lecha? Lech, Lamed is 30, 50, right? Chaf is 20, so it's 50. So Lecha is 100, right? So Lecha, how many years did Avraham live? 175. How old was he when he left? It says quite clearly he was 75. He was 75. Avram ben Chomesh Shanim v'Shivim Shana v'Tzeizah Mecharan. He was 75 when he went from Charan. So the Balaturim says Hashem was telling him, Lech Lecha, you'll go for 100 years. You're now 75. Lech Lecha is gematria 100. For another 100 years you'll go. You'll live for another 100 years is 175. So that's what it was alluding to on those gematrias. But let's move on to the next test. Now this is something that I don't really understand. Well, not the next test. The third test, according to many opinions. It's something I don't quite understand. Maybe you can help me with it, especially maybe the women. So the second test was, he gets to Israel, Hashem says stay here. And all of a sudden there's a famine. Right? The Gemara said there was only a famine in that land. And now Hashem says to him, well, Vayira ba'aretz, there was a famine, Vayered avo Mitzrayim. He had to go to Egypt. He had to leave, right? It was starving, no food, you can't stay there, so he had to leave. And that was a huge test, because he was like, well, you just told me to come here. I come here and there's a famine. I mean, what's going on? So, but he didn't think that, right? He was still believing in Hashem. That was one part of the test. Some people say this was one of the hardest tests. Why? Because he wasn't even allowed to think, well, what's going on? What sort of nonsense is this? I mean, I come here. I mean, I was fine in Choron. I had plenty of food, right? I had plenty of bank accounts over here. Here, the ATM machines don't accept my cards. It's famine. What's going on? Couldn't even think that for a second. Another idea of this famine is, Avraham was telling everybody how great Hashem is, right? Hashem could do everything. Hashem runs the world, right? That was one of the things he was saying. He controls everything. You believe in him, and everything will be okay. And then everyone's saying, excuse me, Mr. Avraham, but you're telling me everything's fine, but now God just told you to move here, and now all of a sudden there's a famine. I mean, where's your God looking after you now? So that was also part of the test, that he couldn't allow people to trick him and make him feel that way. That's what people say even today. If God is so kind and God is so amazing, why is it this, that, the other? So that was also part of the test. Okay, so he comes to Egypt. Then we come to test number 3. What's test number 3? This is something I don't quite understand. So on the face of it, he's coming there, and he says to his wife, don't forget Mitzrayim were dark-skinned, black, so therefore they hadn't seen a white woman before, right? Well, in reason, so all of a sudden the Sarah was a beautiful woman. And he says, he didn't know your dad, they're gonna, now I know you're a beautiful woman. As Rashi says, what do you mean now he knows? Well, he didn't know now, he was 75 years old, he'd been married for many years. So the first shot of Rashi is he was very, very frum. Right? He never really properly looked at his wife, right? Okay. But then Rashi goes on to other pshat, and usually, right, women can make themselves look beautiful. They have their makeups, they can put, they're feeling a bit tired, they can put the cucumbers in the eyes or whatever it is. But when you're journeying, you don't have those luxuries, right? Because, you can't take all your makeup with you, can't fit it in a suitcase. So when you're traveling, you're all exhausted and you haven't been able to have your spa treatments and it's a famine and you haven't been able to have your drinks. That's the test to see who's a beautiful woman, right? You haven't been able to put... And still, she was so beautiful. Now that I know that you, even in a famine and all this travel, we've been traveling for who knows how long, and you still look so beautiful, now I know you're truly beautiful. Okay, so now he says, I'm very worried, because we're coming to this immoral place, and they're going to see this beautiful woman. What's going to happen? They're going to say, we want this woman for the king, or for ourselves, whatever. They'll kill me and take you. So because we don't want this, we'll tell them you're my sister. So what was he expecting to happen? So he was basically telling her, if I tell them you're my sister, they'll still take you, but they won't kill me, right? That's what he says, right? Say that you're my sister. I'm going to live on your account. But basically, they'd still capture her, take her, and marry her, rape her, abuse her, whatever you want to call it. That was still part of the plan. That's what he was saying ahead of time, right? If you say you're my wife, I'm going to take you, or they'll kill me because they want you. If you say you're my sister, they'll still take you, but at least they'll keep me alive. So basically, that's what he was saying. And then it comes, and yes, they took. He says, yes, she's my sister. They took her, and Hashem made miracles, and Paro got afflicted, and Baruch Hashem, she wasn't touched, and she got back united with Avraham. So this was the third challenge. I don't quite understand. Why is this a challenge for Avraham? If anything, it's a challenge for Sarah. She was the one who was taken. She was the one who was, all right, Baruch Hashem, in the end nothing happened, but she was the one who was threatened to be raped or abused or whatever. The test should have been for her. Okay, so it's not very nice for a husband to see his wife, taken away. Okay, but he knew that was going to happen, right? He was thought of it. Now, I don't know about you women over here, but if this happened to my wife and I said, you know what, I'm just going to abandon you and I'll just let them take you, I don't think she'll ever talk to me again. And that would be the end of that, right? You didn't stand up for me, you didn't fight for me, you didn't stand up for me. The first sign of trouble, you let them take me away. Right? That's what Avraham did. He washed his hands of her. Right? If we're going to look at it in the simplistic way. They're going to take you? Did he fight? Say, she's my wife. Leave her alone. I'm Avraham. No. Didn't do any of that. He said, yes, I'm going to abandon her. Let her go. And he didn't know they were going to bring her back or whatever. Who knows? I don't know what he thought was going to happen. So why is this a test for Avraham? Why is it considered one of his tests? Why? And then, according to most opinions, again, in next week's Pasha, when Sarah was taken by Avimelech, king of the Plishtim, also was a test for Avraham. So why are these tests for Avraham? Okay, it's not very nice to see your wife taken, but, he was prepared for it. He knew it was going to happen. So why is it a test for Avraham? It should have been a test for Sarah.
He had a job to do. He had to make a Jewish nation.
Right, but why is his wife being captured considered one of his trials? Why is that a big test for him as opposed for her?
Because he had something bigger to do than to take care of his wife. He did. He was doing God's work.
But why is the fact that his wife was taken considered one of his trials? What was the trial about?
Didn't like it.
What should he have done? Not let her be taken? But he passed all his trials, right? He passed all his trials, as we know, right? He passed all the 10 tests. So obviously the fact that he should have fought for her. So before we go any further, I want to read you out a Ramban, which is not something you've probably contemplated before. Not reading the Ramban is not what you've contemplated before, but this Ramban is okay. So the Ramban says, and I brought it because I wanted to read out the language, because it's in some ways it's frightening. So the Ramban, here we go. He says by Avraham, it's interesting. He says that, women don't think they're beautiful, right? Men say, oh, you're a beautiful woman, you're amazing. And well, nah, I'm not. So the same thing happened here. Avraham said, you're so beautiful, they'll capture you. So I was like, nah, they won't. I'm not so beautiful. Who likes me, So he wanted to put in a box, not a box. So Shara was like, like any woman. Nah, I'm not so beautiful. They'll know. They won't look at me. Why does anyone want to take me? So that's what the Medrash says happened here as well. He said, no, they're going to take you. And she said, nah, I'm not so pretty. Don't worry. And that's why he said, Hine noyed, I know. Take it from me, right? You're beautiful. They're going to take you. So anyway, so the Ramban, I should really have marked these things. Here we go. Where he says, hold on, where is it? He says here, he says, don't tell me I can't find it now. Right, so the Rambam talks about here, they were having this whole fight. But the Ramban says that this was a big sin. Here we go. V'da, and you should know, Ki Avraham Avinu chata chet gadol. Avraham Avinu sinned chet gadol, a great sin. That's why I wanted to read it out, so you didn't think I was making it up. Bishgaga, by mistake. Shehevi ishto hatzadekes b'mikshol avon, by putting his wife in this potential problem. Mimnei pachtoi penya hargenu, because he was worried they were going to kill him. V'hayaloi livtayach b'shem, he should have believed in Hashem. Sheyatzil loisoi ves ishtoi ves kol asher loi. He should have believed that Hashem would save him and everything, right? He believes in Hashem. Avraham didn't want to rely on miracles, but at least, it's one thing not relying on miracles, another thing throwing your wife under the bus. Ki yesh belikim koyach latzoi lahatzil. And Hashem has the power to save, so why did he not think Hashem would save him? Gam yitziyasem in Oretz, even when he left the land, shenitztava leh b'tchila b'nei Arav, and Hashem said, go to Eretz Yisrael, and he decided to leave, Avon was also a sin. Kerakim bara yiftenim umavas, because even in famine Hashem could have sustained him. So the fact that he left in the first place, according to the Ramban, was also a sin. Again, chata chet gadol. Right? This is not a small little mistake. Chata chet gadol, by throwing his wife to the dogs or whatever, he sinned a great sin. Varamasa azem, because of this, nigza al zaroi hagolus be'eres Mitzrayim. That's why his children were exiled. We had the Golus Mitzrayim because of his mistake. Why? Because b'makom hamishpat shama haresha v'ached, the place where you'll judge, that's where the original sin was. So according to the Ramban, now I haven't seen further exactly what the Ramban says were all his tests, because we know he passed all his 10 tests or whatever. But you see, so the Ramban says this was a mistake, right? I mean, he shouldn't have just given up on his wife so easily, right? He should have believed in Hashem, and he shouldn't have even left Canaan in the first place. I mean, this is fascinating. That's why I wanted to read it inside. And, okay, so that's the Ramban, that he sinned and he erred by literally throwing her under the bus. But what, again, for the people who say this was a test, what is this test over here? What is it? So perhaps one can say, again, maybe this is a little bit radical. So see what you think of this. We know that a man and a wife, what's the expression the Gemara gives? Ishtoi kagufo. A wife is like exactly the same as a husband, as we know. And if, I don't know if you want to call it Kabbalistic sources, that a husband and wife are one soul, and they're separated, and then they... Oh, exactly. They're one connection. So they're basically one unit, and they're just two different parts of the same unit, but they're basically one. They're the same. They have the same dinner, one unit. Actually, it's interesting, the Chidah, also one of the Kabbalistic things. Sometimes... just to digress a little bit, you sometimes you see somebody that you connect very well with, right? And you, I don't know, maybe you have feelings towards them, or you like them, or whatever. How does that work? I mean, either you... So the Chidah says that every soul has your perfect soulmate, as they call it, right? You have your soulmate, but then there are also several, I don't know how many, several compatible souls. Right? So this is your soulmate, says the Chidah, and there's a few that would work out pretty well. I don't know, your soul makeups are similar and you're cut from the same cloth. I don't know, this is your cousin's soul and this is whatever. So that's why, people can... Anyway, so that's where he's brought that in out of interest. But, or maybe you're not interested, I don't know. So we know that a man and a wife are the same. So I think perhaps, because don't forget, even the test of Lecha, it was Avraham's great test. And yeah, maybe we can say Sarah did exactly what Avraham wanted. But it's still a big thing for Sarah as well. She was a few years younger than him, right? She was 10 years younger than him? She was 90 when she had the baby and he was 100, so 10 years. So she would have been 65, okay? So she was not a young woman, right? She also had to up, stick and leave. She had these two things here with it being captured, which was all about her. She also had the famine, right? She was a great tzaddikas, we know that. In fact, the Gemara says she was a greater prophet than Avraham was, right? So she was, a real special person, greater than Avraham. So she also had, so these tests were tests for the Akedah too. Yes, Avraham was the one who was doing it, but, when Sarah found out, of course it's a test for her too, right? And the famine was certainly a test for her. Maybe not the bit about her dying. The one who says that the final test was the burial of Sarah. That's not a test for her because she was obviously dead. But besides for that, all right. So they say that some people say that also marrying of Hagar was also a test for Avraham. But that was also a test for Sarah because she was the one who said, "Hey, I can't have children. Take my maidservant." That must have been difficult for her, right? There's a darling husband, and she's giving him over to the maidservant. It's also a test for her, right? And the ones of Yishmael must have also been difficult for her. She must have still had some feelings to Yishmael, not just get rid of a human being like that, even though they're not your blood relative, but you're not going to kick them out and so on. So they were difficult tests for her too, right? So maybe if we go along, as I say, this radical explanation of these tests of Avraham and Sarah, like one. So when we say Avraham had 10 tests, we mean Avraham and Sarah combined together as one entity had 10 tests. So some of them were felt more by Avraham, right? So the ones with Ishmael helped him more because it was his physical son, his blood relative. And some of them were more for Sarah, the ones about her being captured, right? Those were more for Sarah. So maybe that's how we can understand the 10 tests of Avraham. They weren't just tests for Avraham, they were tests for Avraham and Sarah. Because most of them they went through together. Some were more on Avraham's side, right? And some were more on Sarah's side. So therefore, the tests of being captured were really tests for Sarah. Yes, of course, Avraham must have felt not nice. His wife carted away. It's not a nice feeling, of course, right? But they were mainly tests for Sarah. And in fact, even according to the Ramban, who says Avraham chata chet gada, right? Avraham did a big sin, and that's why we got punished in Mitzrayim. Even according to that, we can still say it was a test for Sarah, because Sarah didn't sin, right? She did what she was told, right? So even though you can say that according to the Ramban that Avraham sinned, it was still a test for Sarah. Still a test for Sarah, because she, at the end of the day, sin or no sin, she was the one who's being now all of a sudden captured and carted off to Paro's house and Paro's private quarters, and she is the one who's being thrust upon him. So therefore, even according to the Rambam, we can say that it was a test, but mainly for Sarah. So that's how perhaps we can understand some of these 10 tests of Avraham. And the idea, which maybe we'll talk about more over the coming weeks, of forefathers sinning is not a bad idea in the Torah. The Torah doesn't hide sins from our forefathers at all. Doesn't hide sins from anybody in the Torah. Avraham, Moshe, all these people, we have their sins. Because unlike some of the other religions, we believe our leaders are not perfect. God is perfect. But humans are not. Humans make mistakes, and hopefully we learn from them, we move on from them, and so on. But our leaders are not perfect. Almost perfect. But, they are not perfect. They do make mistakes, and there are consequences, as you see from here. You made this mistake, and then they went to Mitzrayim. So on that note, I think we'll leave it there, and then maybe we'll continue next week on the theme of some of the trials of Avraham, and as I've just said, Avraham and Sarah.
Isn't the Ramban being a little hard on Avraham?